Hey folks, today we're going to take a look at a game that is currently seeking funding on Kickstarter. Well, actually, specifically an expansion for a game that is currently on Kickstarter. That expansion is called Odyssey, and it's for the game Enchanters, or the standalone expansion game to Enchanters, Enchanters Overlords. Now, if you like what you see throughout the rest of this preview video, I'm going to encourage you to go to the official Kickstarter project page from Gindie Games, by the way. And you can do that by following the link in the top corner of your screen, as well as down in the description section underneath this video. Those links will take you to the page. You can find out more information than I could possibly tell you here, both about this expansion and about their previous products as well. And hopefully you will consider backing the project. Now, as I said, Odyssey is an expansion for these previous standalone Enchanters games, and I'll actually be doing a full opinionated review for Enchanters Overlords very soon, but we're just going to talk about what you can expect to see in this expansion for now with this preview video, where I'm going to give my final opinion. But in any event, what this does is add a lot of new content to the base game of Enchanters. If you're familiar with the game, you know that there are these special kingdom decks that you mix together in order to make the main adventure deck. So you have 6 new decks for that. You have new villages, new overlords, and there are brand new ways to play the game. There are event cards. There's a new cooperative mode, which really makes sense for the game if you're familiar with it. So there's a lot of new stuff here, tons of stuff to go over. So what I'm going to do is give it just a little brief preview here of what you can expect to see. I'm going to show you some of the cards, and do bear in mind that these are prototype versions of the cards. So while a lot of the artwork is going to be final, the quality of the cards is going to be much higher in the final version, of course. Just note little things like that, all the overall quality is going to improve in the final version. But this will be enough for me to show you what you can expect, what kind of abilities these cards will have, what kind of gameplay changes they will create. And then after that, we are going to come back and discuss it further.
Odyssey is an expansion for the game Enchanters, and you need either the Enchanters base game or the Enchanters Overlord standalone expansion to play, or both. It adds new kingdom decks, villages, and overlords to increase variety, but also introduces brand new ways to play, including a new cooperative mode. Let's take a look at the 6 new kingdom decks first. They're full of new enchantments, items, monsters, and 1 dragon each. While they're utilized in the same way as the original decks, they also have brand new abilities to use. Gladiator cards have a Colosseum theme, and when taken from the journey track, have an immediate ability that lets you duel another player. You and the targeted player deal your attack value in wounds to each other, minus each other's defense. You also have a chance to use minor actions or the village to prepare for the duel. Mermaid cards have an underwater theme and can grant you pearl tokens. These are like crystals that can only be used to power your minor actions or village abilities, but not for getting journey cards. When you use them, you flip them to their dark side to show that they're inactive, but they will reset on your next turn. Centaurs are all about magical horse creatures, and the distance you travel on your journey affects the abilities on the cards. If you have enough distance, you will activate the effect. Medusae cards have to do with the dark underworld of mythology, and these cards have the weight effect. When you make a journey, you lose 1 crystal for every weight symbol that you have. Harpy cards are all about mythological flight. They can give you speed icons, which reduce the cost of the cards on the journey track by 1 crystal for each one that you have in your possession. And finally, mummies have, you guessed it, a desert pyramid theme. This set uses a desert token that must be randomly flipped to one side or the other at the start of the game, and then the cards from this deck will let you flip it back and forth later. One side of the token gives all monsters, dragons, and overlords +1 attack and -1 health, and the other side does the opposite. In conjunction with each of the new kingdom decks, there are matching villages and overlords, if you have the Overlord standalone expansion. The villages all make use of the new abilities of each kingdom. For instance, the Arena Monday will force every player to duel the player on their left at the end of the game. Concolia will give everyone +1 starting pearls, and Lower Olympolis will give you crystals for having high weight, among other things. This similarly happens with the Overlords, whose abilities may be affected by the abilities of the kingdom deck that's chosen, or their rewards might be affected, like getting pearls or speed. This expansion also introduces new starting cards that replace your Fist and Of Enchanting cards, banner cards, and class cards. You'll start with one of each, and they give your character special abilities and story flavor for your enchanter. Banner cards will give you new ways to earn glory points, defense, or to heal your wounds. Class cards primarily help you get crystals and attack. If you meet the conditions on these cards during the game, the effect will happen. And because these are bottom of the card abilities, they will stay in effect through the whole game. Event cards are another new feature. 3 event cards are shuffled into the adventure deck at random and are resolved as soon as they would be drawn and added to the journey track. Some event cards have one-time effects that resolve immediately, while other cards attach to another card on the journey track as indicated, so that only the bottom effect is showing. This will modify what it takes to acquire or defeat that card, or what happens when you acquire or defeat that card. Finally, if you have the Overlord standalone expansion, you can play with the new cooperative mode. There are special rules for setting this up, including using the Enchanters companion app, the new village Co-opville, which has abilities designed to help all the players, and special more difficult Overlords meant for co-op play. You'll all work together to fight back against the Overlord and his minions, who will be significantly buffed. You'll all win if the Overlord is reduced to 0 health, but you'll lose if your group health is reduced to 0, according to the app. One last thing, as part of this Kickstarter campaign, you may have the chance to get special neoprene mats, both for your game's journey track to replace the paper track that originally came with the game, and for each of the players to keep track of their stuff with their own personal mats. That is Enchanters Odyssey.
Well, it's pretty interesting because I think if you took every bit of content, like the physical contents of the Odyssey expansion, it would just look like a stack of cards about yay big. But the reality is that is a ton of content for the base game, or games, I should say, because there's just so much to do with these. One of the things about Enchanters or Enchanters Overlords is that you can have a lot of variety in the game in and of itself, just because you're putting together different kingdom decks to make the adventure deck. Well, now you have 6 new options for that. Each one not only just has you have your monsters, you have your enchantments, you have your items, and so a lot of variety there. But there's also brand new effects, abilities that these bring to the fore. Things like that really dramatically change the game. Like the whole Pearl system, which is like a whole new type of crystal you can use for very specific things. Dueling with if you use the Arena Gladiator deck with the other players. I mean, dramatically different ways to play the game just by mixing in new kingdom decks. In addition to having new themes and new high quality artwork to use as well. So change of pace, in other words, from your typical game. New villages, new overlords. If you're using the overlords, you don't necessarily have to, but you have that option for you. So again, and they're all they all have these concurrent themes. So you use, if you're using one of the kingdom decks from the expansion, you use the overlord, you use the appropriate overlord, the appropriate village, to really hit that theme home and have like these consistent effects. Like having Concolia, the mermaid village, in effect, gives you an extra pearl, so you're really getting the most use out of that ability. But remember, all the other players are too. So if you're playing the competitive mode, then you may think you're taking advantage of it, but so are the other players. So that's an interesting thing too, just having a ton more variety to the game if you're really into the game to begin with. So this would be like a goldmine for you. But there's also the fact that you have completely brand new ways to play, and it's sort of it's modular, right? So if you want to use one thing, you can use one thing. If you don't want to use one thing, you don't have to. So if you want to use the event deck, for instance, this lets you it adds randomness and sort of it can be either just chaos or more thrilling adventure to how the game is played. Random one-off events might happen, or which is what is I think is the most interesting thing, is that you can add attachments. It will add attachments to the cards that are on the journey track. So fundamentally changes how the journey track is going to operate if you just choose to use that expansion part. The most actually, let's not even get to that yet. But there's the thing that I think a lot of people were asking for this game is to when you start off in the base game, you have just your Fist and of Enchanting cards. Fist of Enchanting, right? Which is just your basic cards that you stack that are just there basically for you to stack your items and enchantments on as you're building your artifact. So that's all that was really for. Well, now you can personalize that by having your banner and class cards. And I actually think I might not mention this in the preview section, but every person gets dealt 2 of those cards, and you choose which of the 2 of each one that you want, and that gives you your flavor for your enchanter. So you might be, a goblin rogue, or a dwarven beggar, or whatever the case might be. And that will, but it's not just a flavor thing; it's special abilities. It's going to help you in if certain conditions are met. Your banner is going to give you ways to get, for instance, glory points or defense. If certain conditions are met, you're going to be able to get crystals or attack with your class. And they never go away because those are bottom abilities. And if you're familiar with the game, you know that those will stay in effect for the entire game because you're just going to keep stacking on top of those with your enchantments and your items. So dramatically changes how the game is played, and every player feels more distinct than the others. You already felt distinct because you're building different items or artifacts during the game. Now even more so right from the get-go. But again, it's optional if you want to use that as opposed to all the other stuff in the expansion. And then the other thing I wanted to mention that I was getting to was the cooperative mode, which is, just a dramatically different way to play. Playing with overlords in and of itself was very different because it's still competitive, but it's just like a higher difficulty level of competitive that really weeds out those who aren't that experienced with the game, because now you're fighting against this one massively powerful enemy in addition to everything else you're having to deal with during the game in order to get those precious glory points. Well, now it's not about glory, although you can still track glory if you really want to, but now it's about the overlord controlling all these minions, and they're all very buffed, and you all have to try and win together, and killing that overlord, which is not easy, while also keeping yourself from dying. You have to use the special companion app for enchanters in order to do it, which is interesting integral meta tech thing that you can add to the game. And there's also a special co-op village explicitly for that purpose. So this wasn't something that they phoned in. This is a built from scratch co-op mode that is fully fleshed out for you to use if you want to. Because again, I got to hit that home. Modular. What you want to use in this expansion, you can use. What you don't want to use, you don't have to use. But if you are a fan of Enchanters, you don't have to take my word for any of this, but I would say that there is a ton of content here. And chances are you're going to find something in here that you really want to use in your original game or the Overlord's game. And if you think that's the case, or maybe you know someone who already has those space games and you want to give this to them as a gift, don't take my word for any of this. Go to the official Kickstarter project page and find out more information than I could possibly tell you here. You can do that by following the link in the top corner of your screen, as well as down in the description section underneath this video. That is Odyssey, the newest expansion for the Enchanters game from Kindy Games. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, for supporting our sponsors. Take care.